Hello everybody, hope you're all doing fantastically well. It is post Huddersfield, it's a 4-1 Leeds win, and listen, it's fantastic news, isn't it? Obviously the teams in and around us were able to pick up points. We saw Sunderland get a 3-1 win. Obviously, you'd expect them to be in and around the top six towards the back end of the season. I think Cardiff pulled out another win as well. Stoke got another win over Middlesbrough. Just some surprising results there. Plymouth pushed. They really pushed Ipswich. Ipswich, who were conceding a mad amount of goals at home, but are seemingly just getting it done all the time. Southampton getting another win. I think it's only a point behind Leeds now. That top four is taking shape a little bit now, isn't it? Probably the teams that you expected there. Leeds, Leicester, Southampton, all comprising that top four. There's very little room for error right now, but Ipswich are just keeping up with the pace, and hopefully that's going to change at some point. And I guess the encouragement for Leeds fans is the fact that they are conceding a lot of goals at home. I mean, we saw the record this morning online. They're conceding 2, 3. Obviously, they conceded 4 to Leeds at home, but they are getting the wins. But you do wonder, is that consistency going to maintain? Is it going to be sustainable conceding that amount of goals at home? And hopefully that's going to switch at some point, but it's going to have to switch pretty soon with the amount of games they're going to have to lose and Leeds are going to have to win to get up there. But anyway, results out of the way. What did we learn from yesterday's game? Now, obviously looking back, reflecting on the fact you've seen certain takes on what's gone on. I did a little bit of a watch along yesterday and a bit of a match reaction afterwards, and interesting comments in the section below and what people are thinking and how people's heads were. The second half, it was a tale of two halves really. Second half was disappointing. We heard after the game that Joe Rodon is going to be okay. Daniel Farke believes for the game on Friday night, the top of the table clash in a strange sort of way against Leicester City, obviously first versus third. How are Leeds going to be able to go about that without a Joe Rodon? I think that's a bigger question. We're so thin really on that ground when it comes to Joe Rodon being out of that side. We're so reliant on him. He's so important to this Leeds United setup that him being out would be devastating, and the complexion of the game changes completely if Rodon is out, because then you have to put someone like Liam Cooper in, who we saw yesterday, and I want to get on this point of things that we learned during the game yesterday and things that we've almost come to the conclusion of afterwards. So, starting with a real positive, Ceno Somerville has taken that Gnonto mantle, hasn't he? I mean, there was so much interest for Gnonto in the summer. It was Everton here. There was rumours of Fiorentina, rumours of Roma, and it got to a point where you were thinking, bloody hell, we're going to lose this lad. He was so pivotal when it came to last season and being that X factor. We always needed someone to replace Rafinha in that X factor mould. Gnonto did it really unexpectedly. Obviously not to Rafinha's level, but unexpectedly, he was brought in the January as a sort of like, okay, yeah, we'll get him. We should get him a little bit later, but he was exceptional in terms of taking players out of the game. His numbers weren't amazing, but he was able to get Leeds up the pitch and create attacking moments for Leeds to, be able to really galvanise on them, and we didn't, unfortunately. But Willie's still a fantastic prospect and is still playing really well in terms of when he's on the pitch. He's given everything for Leeds, especially the debacle that went on during the last phases of the summer months. But the overriding point here is Ceno Somerville, who probably at the start of the season we're thinking, yeah, want to keep around. He's raw, still got elements of his game to improve on. But he's been absolutely superb. And for me, he's taking that mantle that Gnonto was going into this season with. The expectation was on Gnonto. We were rejecting 25-30 million pound bids for him. Everton were heavily interested. Ceno Somerville there was interest in him, but it wasn't as heavy and as spotlighted as Gnonto. Somerville has come out on record and said, I want to stay at Leeds United. I want to develop here. And he, as well as Leeds rejecting the offers, he was rejecting the offers. And wow, how has that helped him? The maturity of the lad now. And we missed him so much against Stoke City. I mentioned it yesterday, but running into those half spaces, running beyond the back line, those intelligent movements that he's providing, those agile sort of shoulder rolls and left and right, and how cohesive he is right now with Dan James and Rutter. Him and Rutter are just on that same level. Whereas Gnonto, I know he's just come back from injury, but Gnonto and Rutter maybe aren't on that same. They seem very individual when they're on the pitch, whereas there's a real partnership when Somerville's on the pitch with our entire front line, even Yoel Perau. So he's a real team player as well, and you can see he's aiding a lot of others around him, and we massively missed that against Stoke City, which in my opinion was Daniel Farke's fault. But yesterday, 2 assists, 2 goals. He was the best player on the pitch, closely followed by Rutter, who is just dominating at this moment in time, and I still think ability-wise he's the best in the division. But what we're learning right now is Somerville is taking that mantle over Willie Gnonto, and it's great to see. And hopefully Willie's going to be able to elevate his game to get to Somerville's level, because we know they're mates. We saw them celebrating with each other yesterday, which was great. You know, even when Gnonto's on the bench, he's not kicking up a fuss. He's celebrating with his mate. That was lovely to see. And, you know, from a stage of Gnonto being up here and Somerville maybe being down here and trying to get to here, it's turned round. And now Gnonto has to get to that level as well. What else did we learn? Daniel Farke simply has to get a different tune out of Yoel Perau. Now, for me, yesterday there was a little bit more of him playing in the number 9 and Rutter in the number 10. But there's something off. There's too many games this season where our number 9, he's got 5 goals so far, which isn't bad whatsoever, but there's too many games this season where our number 9 is out of it, completely out of it. And I don't know why that is. He's, as I've said before, him being in that midfield set is completely ineffective because he doesn't press, really. He's not a good tackler. And when he's part of that midfield dynamic, Leeds look outnumbered. They look outnumbered when teams pack that midfield, which is exactly what Stoke City did midweek. And even yesterday against the really dire Huddersfield side, he wasn't able to get into it. And it's not the first time this has happened against dire sides at Ellen Road. You know, Sheffield Wednesday is another example of it. He's not able to get in the game, and it's inconsistencies. You know, will he get to 20 goals this season? Probably. But he can get more. We can get more out of him. And, you know, we hark back to Marcelo Bielsa when, you know, he was able to really get so many numbers from, and you know, consistent performances and successful performances from so many players. And we revert back to Bielsa because Farke is almost, he isn't Bielsa, obviously, but he's almost that figure in a way in our side now. You know, he's trying to play a good brand of football. He's focusing on the players a lot more, and it's the closest since Bielsa, really, that we've had. So you expect him to improve players, to coach players. I've said I don't really agree with the notion that he's coming out in press conferences and saying, well, Perau's not a presser. I think that's rubbish, to be honest with you. You can coach him into being a presser. And he needs to, I'm looking at Farke here, he needs to get more from Yoel Perau, whether or not that's positionally, whether or not that's, I know this sounds ridiculous to a lot of people, but putting him on the bench for a little bit, then bringing him back in, maybe a little bit more hunger. He needs to do something that's going to elevate Yoel Perau's game consistency-wise, because what you want this season is, even when it's not going well for Leeds, your striker to dig you out. And at the minute, I'm not feeling that with Yoel Perau. When the going's good, Perau's excellent. You know, there's multiple examples of that this season. He'll grab a goal. When it's going against Leeds a little bit, that's where you need a striker to bail you out a little bit, and we're not getting that with Yoel Perau at the minute. So, you know, it was an interesting buy, Yoel Perau, and I mentioned it at the time because I didn't know where Farke was going to fit him in. I didn't know, and I'm still at a point where we're 14 games in, and I don't really know what the plan is with Yoel Perau, and Farke needs to work that out. And last but not least, everybody, things that we did learn yesterday. I think it's time. Well, listen, this sounds very disrespectful, but the whole cheerleader thing is kind of what it is at the minute. You know, when you're looking at, I think there's a hierarchy at the minute of how bad certain individuals are. In this side, I think Luke Ayling's the top. I think Liam Cooper's second. I think Bamford's third, and you all turn around to me, but Connor Bamford. And when I say that, I mean like Ayling worst, Cooper second worst, Bamford third worst. I think the thing is with Bamford is positionally and in a press, I think it can work with a Farke side if Farke decides to ignite a press at some point. And he can be useful in some respects, not scoring, but just be useful in terms of putting a defence at unease, and maybe you know the other offensive players in our outlet taking advantage of that. Liam Cooper, I think, I'm still terrified when he's at the back and against a half-decent striker. You know, we saw even yesterday against Bergzorg when he came on. Cooper seemed to be struggling a little bit, and there's an argument he gave away a penalty. Obviously, the referee didn't give it, but there's an argument there. And he looked so much more dangerous, and Huddersfield started playing him down the middle as well, a little bit more consistently. He was drifting off the left, and then he'd drift off the right in the first half, and then when Cooper came on, he seemed to direct it a little bit more down the middle, which was interesting. But yeah, as soon as Ayling and Cooper came on, the reason I'm mentioning this is the old guard are no longer good enough, even Championship level. And I mentioned this last season. And the problem is people are associating these players with Marcelo Bielsa. So they're giving them more and more and more time, more and more and more credit, more and more and more praise. And the hard truth is they are done. They are done. And when I say they are done, I am primarily looking at Luke Ayling and a little bit of Liam Cooper. But Luke Ayling is the one that I wanted to really focus on. He's completely done. You know, I would not be renegotiating a contract for him when it runs out, I believe, which is the summer. He's a nice lad. I really appreciate what he's done for Leeds United. But even coming on yesterday, his passing was horrendous. His 1v1 defending was awful. He's not quick. He's offering no overlaps whatsoever when Dan James is looking for them. And when he does offer an overlap, he's punting it out of play. And yesterday was another indication from Luke Ayling. I think it's because you revert back to three years ago when he was playing against Huddersfield at Ellen Road at a similar point. Leeds won 2-0 just before COVID set in, and he was unbelievable. Scored that fantastic goal, pacey down the right wing. Very good 1v1 defensively, proactive, but when he was proactive defensively, it'd work. But now he's just completely off it. And I think the old guard, the 1, the 2, the 3, and Ayling, Cooper and Bamford are edging the end point at Leeds United. I understand, experience in the background. I get that, but that's fine. Keep them in the background and use sort of Bamford sparingly. But the other two, I'd be looking at and thinking, nah, not again. Not again. We're not going to involve them a lot in terms of playing time. I'd be fascinated to hear what you guys think on those points. Really, really interested. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? It's been a pleasure, guys. Catch you in a bit.